The grit dusted across the underside of a curbstone catches the afternoon sun in minute flares. It is an orange powder, mixed with dried cigarette ash and some faint, iridescent oil stain. A single piece of discarded bubblegum, hardened into a wrinkled pink cup, rests near the edge, slowly disintegrating under its own weight. We often build our lives like careful tracks, laying down predetermined rails that guide us from one point to the next. We invest so much effort in keeping those lines straight, in maintaining the illusion of forward motion, that we rarely notice how deeply embedded we are in the path already drawn for us. And when the destination proves empty, or perhaps worse, entirely wrong, what is the cost of unlearning a direction? The courage to change directions is not merely about choosing a new path. It is the difficult act of admitting that the initial map was incomplete. To understand this requires looking at how we define permanence. Many people mistake structure for truth, believing that stability, a career track, a committed relationship, an established identity, is synonymous with fundamental reality. But philosophy offers tools to dismantle these comforting fictions. Consider the Stoics, particularly Seneca. They argued that much of our suffering comes not from external events, but from our attachment to expectation. We are constantly predicting what tomorrow must look like, building entire emotional architecture on the premise of continuity. This need for predictable flow is deeply human, yet it binds us to trajectories chosen by others, by culture, by family, by sheer inertia. The greatest philosophical hurdle, then, is this. True freedom requires accepting that our internal sense of self must be fluid, capable of being rerouted at any given moment. This intellectual framework forces a painful realization about the nature of effort. We are taught to maximize input and minimize deviation. Every perceived wrong turn feels like wasted time, an economic loss against the investment of years spent on a singular goal. This creates profound psychological resistance. We become addicted not just to success, but to the feeling of linear progress. We cling to the path because abandoning it requires acknowledging that all the effort expended so far might have been structurally irrelevant. We develop what postmodern thinkers call structural loyalty, a devotion to a system or narrative simply because it provided the scaffolding for our early understanding of agency. It is easier, therefore, to become good at being lost on the old track than to risk the terrifying blankness of starting anew. But life rarely operates according to the optimized Gantt chart we draw in our minds. Life happens laterally, sideways. The pivot point, the moment one decides to quit the established path for an unknown detour, is often preceded by a quiet failure to connect with the central purpose. This is where philosophy must become deeply practical. We must learn to distinguish between sensible caution and paralyzing fear of the void. Seneca would advise us to view this indecision not as a lack of courage, but as a miscalculation of what we actually value. Do we value the comforting solidity of the known failure or the uncertain possibility of genuine growth? The answer is always terrifyingly simple. We must give greater weight to capacity for change than to current proficiency. The gum wrapper remains in place, its pink surface bleached by the harsh midday light. It has no structural integrity left. It cannot support itself and will eventually collapse into a sugary puddle. Yet until the moment of failure, the shape resists gravity, clinging stubbornly to the corner of the curbstone. It seems that the only way any object can truly begin a new phase, the slow melting, the spreading stain, is by fully giving up its previous form. The scent of oil and dust settles into the air, mingling with the fading sweetness of the gum wrapper. The grit, which settled so easily today, will be washed away tomorrow. It was never fixed to this spot. It simply aggregated here until gravity or wind dictated a change in direction. And we are only particulate arrangements of matter, capable of shifting our own center of gravity when enough unseen force, whether it is a simple curiosity or the weight of accumulated knowledge, pushes us off the rails entirely. We spend so much time defining ourselves by the straight lines we draw, the career path, the relationship timeline, the set belief system, as if life were a blueprint meant to be followed with unwavering loyalty. We treat deviation not as an opportunity for expansion, but as evidence of structural failure. And the immense effort required to maintain that perceived rigidity is often far more exhausting than the simple act of yielding. It requires us to negotiate with the ghost of who we thought we had to be yesterday. The courage I speak of, then, is not a grand, defiant moment on a mountaintop. It is quiet. It is the willingness to walk away from a comfortable certainty simply because the wind changes and you realize the view was always meant to be different. It's acknowledging that the map we carry is merely a suggestion, a collaborative effort written by a previous version of ourselves who had excellent intentions but lacked the benefit of hindsight. We are terrible cartographers when it comes to our own emotional landscapes, mapping deep valleys onto ridges and mistaking dead ends for definitive boundaries. To change direction means accepting that the skills we honed, the particular expertise, the fierce loyalty, the accumulated knowledge, do not become obsolete simply because the context shifts. They transform. The tools remain, but their application requires a recalibration of purpose. It is the difference between a shovel being used to dig grave and a shovel being used to plant new beginnings. The weight and resilience of the metal are unchanged. Only the trajectory of its intention has been adjusted. This process demands a deep trust in potentiality, the belief that there is always an adjacent path, equally viable, even if it looks nothing like the one you were meticulously preparing for. We fear the void between the old direction and the new. We cling to the inertia of what was because the unknown seems less terrifying than the sheer effort of redefining oneself in real time. We mistake comfort for stability, misunderstanding that true stability is not rooted in permanence, but in flexibility, the core understanding that we are built for movement. We must learn to distinguish between being lost and simply being unmapped. They are fundamentally different things, requiring radically different kinds of resilience. This realization forces us into a deep conversation with our past selves. We have to forgive the rigid architects who drew those initial blueprints. We owe them nothing but acknowledgement, a nod to their effort, and then we must gently redraw the lines in the dust. It is an act of profound self-compassion, realizing that every mistake was not a failure of character, but simply data point for the next iteration. And so, when you feel yourself at the periphery, standing at the intersection where one path promises security and another promises exhilarating uncertainty, listen closely to that quiet internal hum. That subtle pull is the compass needle swinging free of magnetic constraints. It is the universe gently reminding you that stasis is a myth. The gravity that held you fixed here for so long was only gravitational illusion, an agreement you had made with yourself about where your feet belonged. The gum wrapper is crumpled now, almost transparent against the grit-stained surface, its faded colors having surrendered entirely to the elements. There is no need to smooth it out or gather the pieces back into a neat little packet. The effort of repair would only frustrate the process that already began, the effortless scattering by wind and time. Just like this wrapper, we are meant to be transient arrangements, beautiful in our momentary scatter. We simply flow where the light directs us next.